please, which is INQ 235863. Thank you. If we move, please, to page 2 of this advice from March. This advice suggests that it was understood that around a third of cases are asymptomatic. And at paragraph 3, it details the Test Trace Protect Programme Board considered the testing of all asymptomatic as well as symptomatic close contacts, but recommended asymptomatic testing was not implemented due to concerns at the time over PCR testing capacity. There were also concerns about the possible behavioural effects, notably the risk that close contacts who test negative might break their self-isolation. And can I ask you then, was it a capacity issue rather than the current position of scientific advice that may have also factored into the decision to implement asymptomatic testing in the May?
The May decision on asymptomatic testing in relation to care homes was not constrained by capacity. That decision was driven by the advice of SAGE.
Thank you. Can we then please just clarify, because you are identifying in your statement about this being new, the advice of SAGE in the May, and I just want to question, do you stand by that referencing it as new evidence is appropriate in the full context of academic literature that was available in May of 2020 that did indicate there was good evidence of asymptomatic transmission?
So there were previous submissions to ministers. I think there was one on April the 30th that set out advice on testing in care homes that certainly did discuss and raise the issue of asymptomatic transmission. However, at that point, the best evidence that was available to us was that the asymptomatic transmission that was known and understood did not warrant universal testing in care homes. As I say, subsequently, SAGE was asked to provide advice, which it did on the 12th of May, and on the basis of that, further advice was given to ministers with a revised recommendation that asymptomatic testing of staff and residents be introduced.
Thank you.
Accepting that and accepting that obviously capacity is always a factor, but did people consider the possibility that there was asymptomatic transmission, and therefore the right approach, if one was going to contain this pandemic, was to operate on the basis there was asymptomatic transmission?
So the advice at the time also asked us to consider the potential risks of testing on an asymptomatic basis, in particular that you might get, in periods of low prevalence, a significant number of false positives that would lead to individuals being extracted from the workplace, which in and of itself could then create harms if you were not able to staff appropriately and safely. So whenever testing decisions were being made, there was always a balance of harms that was being considered. But as I say, in the case of care home testing and asymptomatic testing there, as soon as the evidence pointed conclusively to there being benefits from doing so, we did so.
What was the evidence to suggest the significant number of false positive tests? There was evidence from Public Health Wales and from the Technical Advisory Cell. That was subsequently published then, I think in July, where they talked about the most effective use of PCR testing. And there are some tables in that document that set out the potential for false positives in low prevalence environments, and the need to consider whether that in and of itself would create more harm.